But to help the session flow, I won't be pausing to accept questions during my presentation. Instead, you can make a note or kind of add a comment, and then I'll ensure that we have plenty of time to answer them at the end of the session. So let's get underway. Firstly, what exactly is SSJS and why would you use it? Well, server-side JavaScript, or SSJS, is a scripting language for Salesforce Marketing Cloud. You see, while AMScript is a proprietary scripting language that enables sophisticated content personalization across channels, SSJS is based on JavaScript, which is the world's most widely used programming language. And SSJS enables you to extend the capabilities of Marketing Cloud through an extensive set of functions. Now, there are many use cases for SSJS, which primarily focusing on marketing automation through the ability to include script automation. We have API integration to both external APIs and also Marketing Cloud APIs, and web development in Cloud Pages through an extensive set of functions for doing things like getting and setting cookies, form data, HTTP headers, and more. And while JavaScript can seem intimidating when you're getting started, it's actually really easy to learn. So if you don't know JavaScript, we won't be covering JavaScript today. There are many resources on learning JavaScript, but I do encourage you to take the time to go and learn it. But so for the remainder of today's session, again, I'm not teaching you JavaScript, but instead I'll focus on the key concepts and language fundamentals that you will need to understand in order to use server-side JavaScript in Marketing Cloud. Now, let's talk about the language. So SSJS is based on ECMAScript. ECMAScript is the scripting language that forms the basis of JavaScript and is standardized by ECMA International. Now, the intent of the standards is to ensure the interoperability of web pages across different web browsers. While ECMAScript is commonly used for client-side scripting on the World Wide Web, and it's increasingly being used for writing server applications and services using things like Node.js. And server-side JavaScript in Marketing Cloud is another example of that server-side language. Now, it's important to note that SSJS in Marketing Cloud is based on edition 3 of ECMAScript, which was released back in 1999. Now, fast forward to today, ECMAScript, I think, is now in its 12th edition. So while you can't take full advantage of all the JavaScript features in later editions, like things like asynchronous programming and various functions for easy manipulation of objects, ECMAScript 3 does provide elementary support for the vast majority of platform use cases. Additionally, and in fairness, ECMAScript 3 is a lot easier to learn than programming concepts introduced in later JavaScript versions. Now, SSJS features can be broadly categorized into the following areas. We have core functions, platform functions, API functions, WSProxy, and finally, script utility objects. And in today's session, we'll be focusing on core functions, platform functions, and WSProxy. Now, I won't cover API functions, as these are effectively now replaced by WSProxy. Additionally, script utility objects provide really advanced support for external HTTP integrations, and there aren't many use cases for them. In fact, I think I've used them twice in the past 8 years. But look, there's a really good documentation and code examples available in the community if you'd like to go and learn more. Now, I'm just going to go and skip past this next slide. Oh, no, not this one here. But, one question I'm often asked is, what about AMScript? And why do we have these two different scripting languages in Marketing Cloud? Well, let's just take a moment to discuss the differences between AMScript and server-side JavaScript. So AMScript is obviously it's a server-side scripting language. It's very easy to use and learn. It's proprietary to Marketing Cloud, and it enables you to go and personalize both email, mobile, and web content. The main consideration is that it does not support JSON or JavaScript object notation. and it has kind of limited support for external HTTP integrations. So things like going and setting headers. You can't set multiple headers using AMScript functions. Also, you can't go and create your own functions in AMScript. Server-side JavaScript, on the other hand, it's also a server-side scripting language, but it's based on JavaScript, and it enables you to interact with many platform features. You can, again, use it in automations. You can't use AMScript in automations, messages and web pages. It does support JSON. So, if you're parsing and working with JSON data, it's ideal. And it has a much more extensive set of functions. So AMScript is 148 in total, and server-side JavaScript is 332. And we also have much stronger support for external HTTP integrations. And because it's JavaScript, you can actually go and build your own functions. Let's now take a look at the required server-side JavaScript syntax. SSJS code is contained within HTML script tags that has an additional run@server attribute. Now, this attribute is important as it provides an instruction for the platform to execute the server-side code within it. Note that the server attribute can optionally be enclosed in quotation marks, as we see here. Let's now take a look at SSJS functions. So SSJS functions, as I explained before, can be broadly categorized into the following areas. So we've got core functions, which go and support common scripting use cases, really ideal for rapid development. We have platform functions, which are very similar to AMScript. In fact, many of them are wrappers for AMScript, which are separate from the core library. We have API functions, and as I explained, I'm going to skip over those as they've been largely replaced with methods available through WSProxy, which provides an alternative to API functions. So let's get straight in and discuss core functions. So core functions are orientated around using the SOAP API to perform common use cases. Now, they're very lightweight, which means that you can achieve a result often with just a few lines of code, and this makes them ideal for rapid development. However, one consideration is that they're not performant as platform functions or WSProxy, as they incur an overhead as the interpreter has to translate them between the different runtime environments. But they still look really well suited where speed may not be a factor, like script activities, perhaps. Additionally, while the functions are essentially a wrapper for the SOAP API, they can't access all the API object properties, only predefined ones. Now, in order to use core functions, you first need to initialize the core function library, and you can do this using the following syntax. Now, note this platform.load. Note there's several library versions. However, if you define one, this will always load the latest version 1 library. So there's really no need to specify others. I mean, you may see patterns on Stack Exchange, you use 1.1.1 or 1.1.5. Really doesn't make a difference. Just use 1 to pick the latest version. Let's now take a look at platform functions. So as I mentioned earlier, platform functions provide a library which is comparable to AMScript, but JavaScript based. However, unlike the core library that we just discussed, you don't need to load the platform library as it's included by default. Platform functions exist outside of the core library and are generally more performant, and they can be used in messages, landing pages, and script activities. Now, these functions can be identified by their naming convention, which comprises of the object name, which is platform, and then we've got the object property, which is either application, request, response, variable, recipient, or function, and finally, the method or function name. So let's take a look. So here is an example of a platform function that uses the now method to return the current system date and time. Very similar or identical to AMScript's now function. But you can see that this is the kind of anatomy. So when you look at this dot notation, you just remember it's classic JavaScript, object property method. Now let me explain WSProxy, which is a relatively new addition to server-side JavaScript, as this object was added in back in 2018, so only a few years ago. Now, as its name implies, it acts as a proxy between the Marketing Cloud SOAP web service and server-side JavaScript. And this object is available in all non-send contexts, and it has the same restrictions in place as other SOAP API access methods. For example, like you can't go and use it in email to go and send an email. WSProxy is specifically designed to address the limitations of the SSJS core library functions and the programming paradigm of platform API functions, as it enables a declarative programming approach, which means that the object simply instructs on what needs to be done rather than instructing how to do it, which is a welcome departure from the API functions, which follow a strictly procedural approach. Now, WSProxy uses JSON or JavaScript object notation to express object properties instead of XML, which is the markup language used by SOAP. And additionally, you can use the object to impersonate other MIDs in your business unit and also other users, for example, based on their permission set. So we're going to actually be using WSProxy in one example use case today. Now, before we move on, I'm just going to turn the lights on. I'm just it got extremely dark here all of a sudden and struggling to see the screen. That's better. So let me now explain the use cases that we'll be reviewing today. So in our first use case, I just pick this kind of a common use case I see where we want to display an offer or promotion on a cloud page, but that's based on a visitor's locale. So perhaps we want to offer free shipping or shipping options based on what country they're residing in. And to achieve this, we're going to use server-side JavaScript to firstly detect the IP address of the website visitor. And then I'll be using an external service to go and look up the country based on that IP address. In our second use case today, we're going to be making a backup of a data extension, which will be included in the script activity, and we're going to run daily. So as you probably know, in Marketing Cloud, there's no way, at least through the interface, to copy a data extension, that is, the data extension schema and all its records within it. And additionally, it's not possible to undo a data operation. So, perhaps I accidentally delete the data, or maybe I overwrite it using a query. So in these scenarios, you can't quickly restore the data extension to its previous state. So we want to create a script that uses, let's call it this temporary backup data extension every few hours by performing the following operations. So firstly, we want to retrieve the field from a source data extension, then create a new data extension, then retrieve all the records from the source data extension, and finally, add new records to this data extension. So I'm going to show you how to fulfill this use case, firstly using core functions, and then also I'll touch on how to achieve it using WSProxy. Well, let's begin. So before we do, I'm just going to go and pause my screen and just a moment. And I'm just going to go and share my screen again. Give me a moment. Okay, so share screen. I'm going to share the entire screen here. So here we are in Marketing Cloud. We'll come to that later. And here I'm in Cloud Pages. If any of you have done any server-side JavaScript or actually AMScript development in Cloud Pages, you may already be aware of this neat little trick. that I use all the day, and it must save me, I don't know, hours each week. And that's to use a locally hosted file on my computer. In this case, I'm using Dropbox, but you can use Google Drive or Box or a OneDrive and other hosting solutions. There's also another utility called ngrok, ngrok.com you might want to check out. But essentially it enables you to have a local file which has an associated publicly accessible URL. And using this syntax here, we can go and retrieve that in real time using AMScript, and then use treat as content to force evaluation of any server-side code. So, for example, on here, hopefully you can all see this. If you can't, maybe Matt or someone can kind of ping me. We can see I have hello. Let me add two exclamation marks here. And if I go and view this cloud page here, there we go. Hello. And if I go make a change and refresh the page, that seemed to happen. Good. And we've got a third exclamation mark. So, well, let's get on to it in that first use case. So, firstly, I'm going to go and start off with the script run at server. Again, quotation marks are optional. And then I'm just going to put in a closing script tag. And the first thing what we want to do is to go and get the client IP. So in order to achieve that, we're going to, again, we're all using platform functions here. So I'm going to be calling the platform object in all my functions. So let's see, I'll specify a variable. Let's call this var client IP, and then equals, say, platform.request. And there's one called client IP. There we go, with a capital C. And then let me just go and write this out so you can see it. And there's a platform function for writing content. And of course, that starts with platform.response actually this time. And then the method is HTTP, is write. And let's just put client IP. I'll save this, and we go to this page here. You should see the IP address. No, we don't. Response right var client IP. What have I missed here? Var client IP request client IP. Response right. I tripped up. Ah, I see. So sorry, it's a capital P. Maybe this works. Yay, fantastic. There we go. We get an IP address. So this is an IP address of my local computer. Let's just go and check. So what is my IP? And hopefully we come up with the same magic number ending in 3.183. And indeed it is. Fantastic. So now that's out of the way. Let's go and call an external service. Now, just save typing. It's like a cooking show. Here's one I created earlier. I'm sure you don't want to watch me typing all evening. For this, I'm going to set a new variable as the value. We're going to use another platform function, and this is HTTP GET. And I'm using this service called ip-api.com. So it is a free service where we can just go and pass a client IP as part of the URL, and it will go and give me all of that detail. Let's go and see that detail then. I'm just going to go and move this, and let's go and print that out here. Refresh. And there we go. So we get this JSON response back, this key value pair of all the objects. You can see that I'm with Aussie Broadband apparently. That's interesting. And you know, I certainly am in New South Wales, but yeah, okay, that's interesting. It's obviously routed through Sydney. I'm not with Aussie Broadband, which is curious, but it looks like my ISP is actually just white labels as Aussie Broadband. That's funny. Anyway, so now I've got that. We're just interested in the location part. So where is the location? It's let's say we want the country, because we want to say this person's in Australia. So in order to do that, firstly, what we got back is a string. So in order to go and parse this, we need to go and transform this back into an object. So in order to do that, we're going to use another platform function called parseJSON. So I'd say var obj is equal to platform.function.parse JSON. And again, capitalization is very important. And then we're going to go and pass our response. And so now we've converted that string response into an object. And so I can now go and use that to go and set the country. So var country is equal to object, which is that object I just created, and country. So hopefully we can go and write define the country. So let's say you say your country is country. Save and see what happens. Your country is Australia. Fantastic. For those of you who didn't see that, let me go and just comment out this line because it's a bit confusing. And it just takes a couple of seconds. There we go. Your country is Australia. And so, and again, we can now go and use this or combine this with JavaScript to maybe, in this case, maybe we want to go and set perhaps an AMScript variable, which we're going to be displaying on our web page. And I typically use kind of this MVC approach where I've got my obviously my data model is my data extension, but my controller, I write the code in server-side JavaScript for web pages, and then use AMScript as a presentation layer. So let's say that it was something like, if we got something, if let's say country is equal to Australia, or maybe the country is equal to maybe United States, then we're going to go and set a ship variable. Let's go and specify as let's go and define it up here, and I'm just going to set it to ship. So I'll say that something like maybe we ship to, and then space, and we'll put in country. And let's go and be enthusiastic about it and append it with a exclamation mark. And then maybe otherwise, else, maybe we don't ship to country. We don't ship to country. Obviously, I need to space that quotation mark. There we go. And then I'm now going to go and use this really neat platform function. So again, so this is the object is platform. The property this time is variable, and the method is set value. And this enables us to go and set an AMScript variable from server-side JavaScript, where we firstly define the AMScript variable name, in this case ship. We can optionally go and add that at prefix. We don't have to, that's entirely optional. And then obviously the value, in this case, is ship. And so now I'm saying, let's go and then now use AMScript to go and print out a message on our page. So I'm going to go and use the v function to have with that variable, and let's say ship. And then reload this page. We ship to Australia. Fantastic. So that's happened on our page. And outside of that script, just using similar AMScript there. So you can see really just in a few lines of code. And if I go and just remove the right here. Really, there's not many lines of code going on here, but we've gone and detected the client's IP address, that's the website visitor's IP address, and then displayed a personalized message based on what country they reside in. So that's kind of a really cool, useful feature. So let's go and take a look at another use case of going and backing up an existing data extension. And there are quite a few more lines in this one. So rather than going and typing it out, which is kind of a tiring thing, and you're watching me making mistakes, I think it's a bit late in the day here, I'll copy and paste. Let's go and start off by going and having the same container, but this time we're going to go and start by loading the core library, because we're going to be using core functions in this example. So as I said before, if you're using core functions, you have to go and load the core library and core, and then if I specify 1, this is going to load the latest version of the version 1 library. And then in Marketing Cloud, I have a data extension. This has a key of customer orders. And so what we're going to do is, firstly, I'll define that as a variable. So I'll just call it var source de name key, because it's both the name and the key, and call it customer orders. And now we're going to go and initialize this data extension. And so to do that, I'm just going to go and again just use this variable here. So you'll see there's fairly comprehensive documentation on Salesforce help. But firstly, in order to go and use the data extension with a core function, we have to initialize it. And then once we've initialized it, we can use one of the available methods. So in this case, I'm going to go and retrieve all the fields in there. So I'm going to go and specify a new variable called source fields. And it's going to, the object is obviously that the source DE variable I defined, and then I'm using the fields property and the retrieve method. And so just to prove I'm not kind of making this up, let's just actually go and Google. I think you can't go and write code without seeing documentation, right? So fortunately, this is a very common method, and it's there are many code examples out here on the online. So it looks like what it retrieves is an array of all of the fields in my data extension. So let's see if that's right. Now, rather than use the platform.responseWrite, there's also a matching write core function. So you simply can use write, which is a lot easier, obviously. I only used platform functions before because I was demonstrating platform functions, and secondly, now I just want to use the core library. So we're simply going to write source fields. The problem if we do this, as you'll see in a moment, I just go and refresh the page. It won't really show us much because this is actually a JSON object. We need to go and stringify this, in order to output the JSON object as a string. So I can use this core function stringify source field. So let me close. When I reload the page. Fantastic. So now we've got an array containing objects of each field in our data extension. So we've got names of order priority and region, order ID and country, item type. So we're going to actually use these fields to go and create our new data extension. So let's move on to that. So firstly, what I want to do is to go and we need to iterate through this field array that we retrieved. I need to go and I can't simply go and copy and paste this and create my new data extension. In that the object ID, this is a specific unique identifier for a field in this data extension. It has to be exclusive. It can't be used in a different data extension. So, and we're just going to go and pluck a few things like we need the name. If it's a text, we need to know what the length is, and what else do we need to know? Yes, also if it's a primary key, then we need to go and define that too. So again, it's a bit like a cooking show. Here's a block of text I wrote earlier. So firstly, I'm going to go and define an empty array, and then I'm going to go and push objects into that array. So here you can see I've created a for loop, and I'm looping through all objects in the source fields array that I retrieved earlier. And then for each field, I'm actually creating this object called field, and then inserting key value pairs of firstly the name to go and get that name value, and then what field type it is, be it email address or text or number or whatever. And if it's text, I need an additional property, and that's the maximum length. And if it's a primary key as well, then I need to define that too. So we have a look as any primary keys. It should be is primary key false, but there's here. So this field type of number of the object ID is a number. So this is a primary key. So we go and do this, and let's go and just write, and then obviously stringify. And field will contain all of the objects that I just stuffed or pushed into that field array. I spelled that wrong, so this is going to be embarrassing. Now let's go and reload the page. And there is it. I'm just going to comment out this. There we go. So you can see we've got an array containing, I guess, a shortened version of that data we saw, but I'm just plucking the key value pairs that I need to go and create my data extension. So now we've done that, it's all kind of pretty much plain sailing from here. So the next thing what I need to do is we need to, because we're going to be creating this data extension, let's say every few hours, it needs to be unique. And so I'm just going to go and simply create a unique GUID value. And there's similar to the SSJS, sorry, the AMScript function is a similar JavaScript function. And that's actually a platform function. It's called platform.function.GUID. Is the standard 36 character GUID, and I can then go and use this to go and suffix my data extension name and key that I'm going to create. So let's call de name, sorry, var de name, and we're going to go and set that to the same as the source data extension name and key. I'm going to go and append that, perhaps with just an underscore character, and then that GUID value, which is set. And then the next bit, I can't just be typing all this out, but we need to go and create an object that we're going to be using to create that data extension. So the object contains all of the, I guess, metadata that's required to create the data extension. So firstly, we've got the what external key or customer key that we're going to be using for the data extension, which is that random GUID, just to provide to avoid any collision. And then we got de name, which is this the original data extension name and key, and the GUID suffix. And the field, the field array we looked at earlier. Now the category ID is which folder to go and create it in. So in order to, this never changes, right? It's always going to be in the same folder. So we can obviously obtain this programmatically, but it's a bit of a bore. So I'll just show you how to go and obtain it. The quickest way is if you hover over the data extension name, and the bottom, now it's not going to play, of course, SSJS. There you go, come on. Oh, no, you hover over the folder, I apologize. And then you'll see the category ID 6808 appears down the bottom. And so, yeah, I just grabbed that and put that there. So if we go and save this now, the final thing we need to do is to go and add, create that data extension. So to do that, we're going to be using the data extension add function, where we can simply go and follow the syntax here. So I'm just going to type in simply a data extension. I don't think it actually goes and returns a value. So I don't know if it's worth even setting as a variable, but and then define that object we just created. And if I go and run this script now, please work. Oh, that kind of looks a bit promising. If you go back to that folder and click on it here, you can see that there it is. It's created a data extension with that unique GUID value. And then obviously the next time I go and run this, or hopefully go and create another data extension with that's also unique. There we go. And inside it, it's got the matching fields from that data extension. So they've been kind of replicated completely. So we've retrieved the fields, we created a new data extension containing those fields. Now all we need to do is to retrieve all the records from the source data extension and go and add it to our target data extension. And we can actually do this in kind of 2 lines of code with server-side JavaScript, depending on how many records you're adding actually. So let's go and show, let's pretend that we've only got, I don't know, a few hundred, less than 2,500 records. So I simply go and just as I initialized that source data extension, we now go and do a similar thing for that target data extension that we just created. So let's go and create a new variable called var target de. And I'm going to go and specify it as using the data extension is the object and init, and to initialize, and it was the GUID value. Do you remember that we set up here? There we go, customer key is the GUID. So remember, these core functions use the external key, platform functions use the names, so, which is why I generally set both the same value as name and external key, so I can use them interchangeably. And now we're going to go and use the add method of a core function to go and add that data, which is going to go and return a count of the amount of records that have been inserted. So let's go and specify that as a count and a variable, and it's the target DE is the object, the property is rows, and then the method is add, and we're going to be adding data. So remember the data that we got from no, sorry, I haven't even retrieved them. Well ahead of myself. So first we need to go and retrieve the data. Let me just go and comment this out actually. Before let's go and retrieve all the data in that data extension. So var data is equal to source de dot rows, and then the method is retrieved. And then if I go, oh sorry, it's just we don't pass the arguments to that method, and then I can write stringify data. You should see kind of a raw response back of all of the records in that data extension. So it will look a bit messy, but no, it didn't like that at all, did it? What did I do wrong here? So which moves me on to the next thing. The way of debugging AMScript is, or server-side JavaScript, is just to really start removing, commenting out code until the error goes away. Here I can see at a glance what the error issue is. It's from something worked too early this morning. It's a bit of a typo, but now this looks a bit promising. It's doing something and should be retrieving 2,500 records. And there we go. So here is all kind of fictional data, of course, the records from that data extension. So now we retrieve them. I can now go and use this code here to go and, again, we've initialized the target data extension, and we're simply going to go and add our data. So that's that array of objects, the objects being each row in that data extension we want to go and add. So now next time I go and run this script, hopefully I should see a new data extension with their record count. So let's go back to the folder here. And it's working in the background. Let's go, SSJS, here we go. And there we go. So it's just created this one here. You can see it's got 25,000 records in there. So 2,500 records. So server-side JavaScript core functions, which, and it's a platform functions gets the first 2,000 records, I think, and core functions get 2,500 records. So again, if you've got just a few hundred records in your data extension, then this is kind of a very effective way. The way, and the reason it only gets 2,500 records is because it is effectively, as I explained before, core functions are a wrapper for the SOAP API, which goes and retrieves batches of 2,500 records. So if we want to retrieve all of the records, then we need to go and use WSProxy. Now I'll kind of show you the code at a glance, but it's kind of outside the kind of a scope of this this introductory session. But I've effectively taken exactly the same code, but rather than going and what am I doing here? Retrieve batches of records. So I need to go, rather than just retrieving 2,500 records, I'm just going to grab this code here. I am going and using WSProxy here. So you go and initialize that utility library, and then the way that it works, if you've ever worked with a SOAP API, and you'll pick it up pretty quickly, in that you just describe your essentially your SOAP envelope is as JSON rather than XML. It's actually a surprisingly good fit. So in this example, I want to go and retrieve. I want to go and perform an upsert on this data extension. So if you use the SOAP API, you'll be familiar with the syntax where you go and put the external key in square brackets. And then all of these other key value pairs are defined in JSON. And then it goes and the way the SOAP API works is, again, it batches it in 2,500 records. And so I've created a while loop here to say that if there's a second batch, then it will go and use this get next batch method. Otherwise, if it's the initial one, it does the initial retrieve. And then I have to do some minor kind of transformation to stringify it, but this, I won't run this. It will take too long to run. It's really designed for use in a script activity, but this really to help you orientate to server-side JavaScript, sorry, to WSProxy. So let me just jump back to the deck, and so I just want to close up with some great resources. So we've covered a lot of ground today, and look, I really hope you found this session helpful. I'm happy to take questions now, but before I do, I just want to share the following community resources with you to help you on your journey in learning server-side JavaScript. So you've got Ivan Mazin's blog, AMScript.xyz, depending on where you live. This is awesome. It's both AMScript and server-side JavaScript. So Ivan's got some great use cases, so check them out. Zuzanna Yarchentz's blog of sfmarketing.cloud. She's a Salesforce MVP, and there's excellent procedural articles on how to get started as a developer in Marketing Cloud. There's the How to SFMC community, and they have regular contests on server-side JavaScript and AMScript. Adam Spig's blog on SpignatureMoves.com, largely AMScript, but also SSJS. A shameless plug for my vlog and my video blog, mc.chat. Go and check that out. And also Greg Gifford's blog, goretonington.com. He's actually got some great 101 articles on getting started with server-side JavaScript. So I'm now going to go and stop sharing, and we have plenty of time for questions. So if you do have a question, feel free to throw them in the chat window. Matt's got Matty, I will answer that question. So Matt already answered some questions. So is there documentation specifically for core versions, functions, etc.? So there's not, at least publicly. Again, I just always use version 1. But it's really to enable backwards compatibility, I think. But if you just, again, use version 1, it will always use the latest version of the of that. We can also use it in customer key. Can you set a data retention period for this data extension, was a question. And yes, absolutely you can. In fact, let me quickly go and show you this. Using, well, you can't go in, can you using core functions? I think it's not documented, but I think you can. Certainly with WSProxy, you can go and do that. Let me just quickly go and show maybe this window here, copy WSProxy, just one here. So you'll see that when I defined my object, I also defined, oh gosh, a straight comma there, my data retention period length, period, delete, whether to delete the end of data retention policy period. So again, all these properties from the data extension object, we can go and set all of those. So that's the way to do that. Other question. Can we define the primary or not null on attributes? Well, you can certainly define the primary key as I've done here. When I do like field as primary key is true, is not null. I'm pretty sure you can. I'd have to go and check the properties. I'm sure that's. I'd be surprised if you can't, basically, but yeah, I think you can. Matt begged me to mention that we're organizing our calendar of monthly events and would love to hear from anyone with ideas. So if you can go over to the chat window, you'll see this link, but in fact, it's just simply slides.com. Let me stop sharing this and share this here. Share screen and window, and maybe this one here. Maybe you'll see the AHA slides. So not that one. AHA-slides.com/SFMCDG. I confess I haven't even seen this, so I'm in for a surprise here. It looks exciting. There we go. So yes, we'd love to hear from you about kind of topics, thanks, Matt. I'll stop showing that. And then anything else? Awesome, thank you. Yeah, is there any guidance on when to use server-side JavaScript over AMScript? And it's a really good question. So not really. I mean, I pretty much exclusively use, as a rule of thumb, AMScript in email, as it's really that's what's designed to do, and use server-side JavaScript on cloud pages, as there are a more extensive set of functions for changing headers and getting and setting headers, that is, and cookies, and you can identify whether incoming data is post requests, and of course, yes, if you're working with JSON, then server-side JavaScript is a much better alternative because you can't natively pass JSON with AMScript. Is there a use case to find out all the dependent data extension used in an automation? And how would you go about that using server-side JavaScript? The answer is, can you find the dependent data extension? So you can certainly, you'd have to use WSProxy. And I think Greg Gifford, or maybe there's on Stack Exchange I read, there's, you can certainly go through WSProxy to go and get an automation. From the automation, we can go and get all the activities used by that automation. But as a tip, I think you have to use a search for programs rather than automations. So let me just go and Google that now. What am I sharing my screen? Who knows? Probably not. Share screen. I'll just why don't I just permanently go and share this this window here. Let's go for SSJS WSProxy automation activities. But I'm pretty sure we can. I've gone through and certainly looked at all the activities in an automation. I found Ivan has. Looks like he's done this through the automation status and history and details to determine his name. Let's have a look here. The program is kind of a predecessor to automations, but I am pretty sure you can. Again, I don't think you are the first person to answer that question, so check out Stack Exchange and Ivan's blog. He might even chime in here. I know he's lurking in the background somewhere. Can you use other libraries in JavaScript, libraries in server-side JavaScript? No, you can't. Yeah, you can't go and load other libraries, unfortunately. You're just limited to ECMAScript 3. So what are some other use cases for server-side JavaScript and email aside from passing JSON? Well, firstly, if you just need to pass JSON in an email, I actually much prefer guide template language, which effortlessly passes JSON and enables you to go and display JSON content and even loop through arrays without involving SSJS. I'd really kind of reserve the use of SSJS unless absolutely necessary. But if you, gosh, I had to do one the other day I'm trying to think. I saw one the other day. What was it? There's some XML which couldn't be passed by. I was helping someone out. XML couldn't be passed by the transform XML or any of the AMScript functions. So I had to go and build quite a tricky XML parser just using JavaScript. A question here, is SSJS more resource hungry than AMScript? Yes, it's a great question. So the answer is certainly that used to be the case. I think they've made lots of improvements over recent years, and a lot of the early constraints that we saw, I saw that this backlog of like 1 million emails because there's some server-side JavaScript using an email. I think they've been addressed, but I really want, when I get some time, want to do some benchmarking. Obviously, in order to do some benchmarking, I need to send a few 100,000 emails, so I need to go and pick the right project and come up with a server-side JavaScript versus AMScript. The recording of this deck and the session is going to be available on if you go to GitHub, we'll send an email after. But I think there's SFM MCD GitHub SFMCDG. We have there we go. We've got our own repo here, and you will observe that all of our resources are in here somewhere. I think docs. I do regularly update this. And we'll go and share a link after. No, this isn't right. I'll go and let you know. And maybe time for one more question, which oh, thanks, Matt. Matt's gone and shared that something. And there's one question about pulling users roles and associated business unit from account via SSJS. So you can do that. I just need to have a look at the corresponding SOAP object, but you can certainly. Pretty sure you can retrieve users and roles. Anyway, just an open invitation. If you so encourage you to give server-side JavaScript a go if you haven't already. Again, it's extremely powerful, and particularly when you go and using it in script activities. Check out Stack Exchange, which is a great resource for if you have any questions about server-side JavaScript. Also, kind of an open invitation if you get stuck. Head over to my blog, mt.chat, and at the bottom of the page, you'll see there is a, beneath all these video content here, there's a link where you can go and schedule a call with me, and I'll be happy to kind of help you out. I don't think I've actually, quite proud, hasn't been a situation where I haven't been able to help someone, so if you can't figure out on Stack Exchange, I'm sure I can help you point in the right direction. Well, thank you all for joining today, and I hope you found this helpful and insightful, and stay tuned. Matt's now on board again as a co-leader, so we're planning many more events in coming months. So thanks again, and see you soon.